Hello, I'm A.S.Guinn, author of the Eternal Knights of Eden book series, as well as the Adam Blackwell Chronicles series. Today I'm bringing you the first in a three-part video about the three most common types of publishing and the advantages and disadvantages to each. This video is aimed at new authors who are very inexperienced in this field in order to help you make a more educated decision about what route to follow when publishing your books. Today I'm going to be talking to you about the first of the three methods, traditional publishing. Versus hybrid publishing and self-publishing, traditional publishing requires the lowest level of cost from the author financially, but requires a significant amount of effort up front. However, in the long term, the traditional publishing method has a tendency to be the easiest of the three if you can get past the initial steps. The reason for this being is the way traditional publishing works. With traditional publishing, an author is responsible for finding themselves a literary agent who will then speak with publishers on the author's behalf. If a publisher chooses to pick up an author's project, then the publishing house will be responsible for incurring most, if not all, cost in producing and marketing the book. They will have a significant level of input in designing the cover of the book, as well as the layout of the interior of the book, because they are incurring the most risk, versus the author, who is putting in no financial effort into this, and thus has no actual risk to his financial well-being. The traditional publishing method is by far considered to be the most desired publishing method among authors, especially among new authors who are inexperienced. The reason for this being, again, you are being backed by a team that has a great deal of experience in how to publish and market books, and it requires no cost on your part. It is also, however, the most difficult route to start on, and the reason for this being is the literary agents themselves. Literary agents receive tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, of submissions every month from prospective authors. As such, they have to be incredibly picky about which projects they choose to represent, because they're staking their careers on the quality of the projects they choose. With the traditional publishing method, there are a handful of very important things that an author must be prepared to do. The first of which is going to be following a very specific set format for your manuscript. If you deviate from these formats at all, you have virtually no chance of success. The reason for this being is that literary agents are sorting through tons and tons of projects. If they see any projects they see as lazy, or that they see as someone who may not be taking this seriously, they are going to overlook your project, throw it into a pile, and never look at it again. Many authors might ask, well, why don't I want to make my project eye-popping? And the reason is simple. The agents don't want you to. Your manuscript is not the book design itself. The manuscript is just your content. It is the raw, unpolished core of your work. It is the story itself, not any of the fancy ways in which you intend to design it. If you go out of your way and you do fancy things to your manuscript, you are only hurting yourself. There may be the occasional agent out there that this may not apply to, but if you're wanting to maximize your chances of success, you're going to want to follow the set format. There are a number of subtle variations to this format, but as long as you follow the core of the format, you should be okay. One of the most important things to remember is 12-point font, and either Arial, Standard Arial, or Times New Roman. You are not going to want to use any fancy fonts in your manuscript. You are also going to want to make sure to double space the entirety of the content portion of your manuscript. And you are going to want to make sure that your margins, your indentations, and your page breaks are done a certain way as well. Since this is essentially a podcast video, I can't really show you exactly how to appropriately format a manuscript, but I can tell you that Google or Bing or whatever search engine you use, but these are the two that I use, will be your best friends here. Simply search the term appropriate format for literary works or appropriate format for fiction manuscript. Some variation of this, you're going to want to look up what the appropriate format is. You are going to come across a number of pages, and there are some small variations in what is considered appropriate, but as long as you follow the guidelines on one of these pages, you drastically improve your chances. What is very important is whatever page you choose to follow, you are going to want to follow the format exactly. It's extremely, extremely uncommon, but if you are eventually asked, where did you learn how to format this for some reason or another, you are going to want to be able to quote where you learned about it so that they can see that you are in fact following an acceptable formatting method. The second and equally as important factor in acquiring a literary agent is going to be what's called the query letter. Query letters are a nightmare, to say the least, because you may receive many variations of advice on how to write a query letter. But at the end of the day, there are a handful of important things to remember about writing a query letter. The first thing that you're going to want to remember is to be clear and concise. You do not want to ramble on, and you do not want to be overly vague. This is a very delicate process. Most query letters are going to be the equivalent of one page. You are going to break it down into 5 parts, including your first part is typically going to be an introduction, 1 paragraph introducing who you are and the basis of your works, your word count, the genre, your targeted audience. You are again going to want to actually look up an example of an appropriate query letter and base yours off of this, because I could talk to you all day long and you may never be able to visualize it. You are going to have 2 to 3 paragraphs summarizing your story without spoiling it. Again, it's very, very difficult because you want to find a way to make your project pop while providing sufficient information without providing too much. You will have a short paragraph with all of your credentials, your history, anything that you've ever done regarding writing. You are also going to want to make sure to not overdo this, because if they feel like you're just blowing smoke up their butts, again, they are going to overlook your project very quickly. And then your very last paragraph is typically just going to be a thank you for your time, I hope to hear from you soon, just something polite to thank them, to flatter them for taking the time to read your letter. And then you'll sign it down below like you would most other emails, with your name, your contact information, and all of this. This is where things get tricky. Most literary agents will have a specific way they request you to submit your query letter. Some agents will ask for the first so many pages of your manuscript to be pasted into the email, below the email itself. This is extremely important. If they ask for this, do not attach a file. If you do, it will never get read. If they ask you to attach the first so many pages of your format to the bottom of the email, then that means that their email's filters will automatically mark anything with an attachment as spam. You are also going to want to make sure to personalize that first paragraph of every query letter. For example, if you have a literary agent named Sarah Doe, and no, this is not an actual agent, I'm just throwing a name out there, you're going to want to say, good evening, good afternoon, greetings, Sarah. First, I want to thank you for taking the time to consider my project. You are going to want to read their agent's pages very carefully and look for something that you can say is why you chose to approach this particular agent. Any agent worth their salt is going to see right through this, but it is still something you need to do. Nobody is truly immune to flattery. And if you personalize the letter just even slightly, you are going to show the literary agent that you are not just spamming large numbers of agents, and that you're actually taking the time to speak to each individual agent. This factor can mean everything in making the difference between getting accepted and getting rejected by some agents. In a field this competitive, it is very important to maximize your chances as much as possible. Something else to bear in mind, and this is one of the most important parts of this whole process, is your mindset. Understand that you are virtually guaranteed to receive a dozen or even several dozen rejections from literary agents who you submit to. And for every rejection you receive, you are going to have probably 3 or 4 queries that never even receive a response at all. This is normal. Do not be dejected by this. You have to understand, again, that these agents are dealing with hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of submissions. And they have to be extraordinarily picky. But there are many, many agents out there. If you do this correctly, you may even pick up an agent who rejected you previously. There are a lot of factors that go into the success or failure of your query letters beyond anything in your control. Some of these have to do with the mood of the agent on a particular day, what the current market is, what books are popular. For example, at the time of this video, in October of 2019, in the anime industry, a genre called isekai, or I'm not really sure how to pronounce this because I am not Japanese. The genre that is popular at this time is people from Earth ending up in fantasy worlds. So, for someone in the anime or manga industry, a project that follows the isekai plotline has a higher chance of success because it's popular right now. In the literary world, it's highly likely that the same type of novels would be popular due to the fact that a great number of Western anime watchers are also book readers. A number of manga readers are also book readers. And so whatever's popular in anime is likely going to be popular in books. So, just because a book gets rejected right now, it could just be because it's out of season. Be patient, continue your submissions, and your particular genre could become popular. And when it becomes popular again, your project that was overlooked in the past might suddenly receive an approval from multiple agents. Some of these agents may keep your project on the back burner to accept at a later date. It's extremely rare, but again, it doesn't hurt to try. Another factor that is extremely important is the time of year of your submissions. The end of the year is usually the worst time to submit your manuscripts because most agents are hard at work with the projects that they've already accepted, or they're on vacation, or they're just taking some kind of break. Because of the level of work they have to put in, they need breaks and vacations just like anybody else. Most of the time, these agents will actually have on their pages whether it's an appropriate time to submit or not. So, just because an agent may not be accepting submissions right now, you give them to check back in a month or two, and they could be accepting submissions all of a sudden. So do not be discouraged. That is, in my personal opinion, the single most important thing when it comes to the traditional publishing method is do not be discouraged. Some authors receive rejections for years before they acquire a literary agent. But if you are persistent, if you are patient, if you don't give up, the odds are that you will eventually get someone to represent you. And then once you do, you're pretty golden. Now, I will go back and stress one more time, there is never a guarantee of success. There are so many factors that go into the success or failure of an art project. And the best story in the world, if it is presented incorrectly or just at the wrong time, may never see the light of day. Or a mediocre project could wind up being incredibly successful just because of proper marketing or good timing. That has been an overview of the traditional publishing method. For those of you watching this video, I hope that this helps you in some way, shape, or form make a decision on how to conduct your future book writing ventures, and hopefully it will provide you some degree of assistance in actually going through with it. This has been A.S.Guinn's Author Corner. Thank you and have a good evening.